Hey Portugal Junkies, it's Mark here. Your favourite Brit was not able to participate in this podcast, and I think the effects were dire since Meredith had some technical challenges with audio, and you'll hear them. Please don't fault us. We thought it would still be better to get you the info that you've been asking for about taxes in Portugal. Oh, and don't forget, the discussions in this podcast should not be mistaken for financial advice, at least from Meredith and me, because we are definitely not financial advisors. Cheers for now.
Welcome back, Portugal Junkies. We have such an amazing episode, and it's about a topic that everybody's asking about. When we say, hey, what do you want to talk about on the podcast? 9 times out of 10, it's people asking questions about this amazing and energizing topic of taxes. And so we thought we would do actually a series of podcasts about this topic because it's impossible to give you information that would encompass everything you need to know in just one. And so we have invited our own Portuguese tax advisor, Rui Borges. Did I get it right?
Perfect. Great.
I got it right. I was practicing his name a couple of times before we recorded. But Rui, thank you so much for joining us. And you guys will hear Rui a number of times on future podcasts because he's going to be coming back for a series of these on taxes and the impact and what you need to be thinking about and planning for, etc. So welcome, Rui. I'm so thankful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity and also for the privilege that is being part of your podcast. It's a huge challenge, and be part of it. It's great for me also.
We are very excited to have you on, and it's been our plan all of this time to start to have guests on the podcast, especially about topics like this that there's no way I'm going to be able to tell people what to do. That's why we have people like you. And your background is 20 years of experience. You are a Portuguese CPA and the CEO and founder of GoalSeek. And you have a background in economics. You hold a master's degree in business administration. That's pretty impressive. And GoalSeek conducted 250 consulting sessions and filed taxes for over 320 clients last year, which I think you told me earlier that tax season just wrapped up. So you must be pretty tired right now.
Well, it's always a tough season, but we survive. Yeah,
I love it.
And one of the general information that we can start sharing is that the tax season in Portugal is from April 1st until June 30.
And we've got like 6 or 7 questions that we fielded from others that are listening to the podcast. And so, like I said, I feel like today is really about like the basics. So the first question is, will I pay taxes in Portugal if I already pay them in the United States?
Well, the base idea is that as long as you are tax resident in Portugal, and to become tax resident, you need to spend in Portugal more than 183 days. This is the general rule. There are also some other general conditions, but the general rule is as long as you have a residence permit in Portugal and also you spend here more than 183 days, you are required to file your worldwide income in Portugal. And also be taxed in Portugal. What the countries have to mitigate the double taxation is the double taxation agreements or treaties. And with that, there are the base rules for how each type of income can be treated in terms of taxes. One good example is interests. If you receive interests from US, you may be required to pay taxes here in Portugal, but you will also pay in US. But not the double. It's not the double taxation. It's just Portugal will tax you in part or in part of your income, and the US will tax you on the other part. And there are some limits also, but each case is one case in terms of double tax treaty.
Isn't it only 2 countries in the entire world that has a double taxation situation, the US and like one other?
No. This is a general. Even when you don't have these double taxation agreements, there are. If the country belongs to OCDE, they also have a general rule for non-double taxation. But it's quite common. Every country, with Portugal and Canada, US and Canada, so each country has a double taxation agreement, and basically they are similar. We have special treaties with Sweden, for instance, because sometimes they don't agree with the way we tax the new residents, and they change the agreement. But there are always some law to support the way the Portuguese tax authorities tax the new citizens.
So a question came in from a listener. I've heard they've discontinued the NHR tax benefit recently. How will that affect me if I decide to retire in Portugal? And is this even worth exploring anymore now that it's eliminated?
It's true that the traditional non-habitual resident status it's coming to the end. However, still in 2024, if you can grant your residence permit here in Portugal and you become tax resident in Portugal, and you can prove somehow that you initiate the process still in 2023, and there are some conditions, you can still apply and be accepted under the old non-habitual resident. The main implications is that instead of being exempt of any taxes in Portugal for foreigner source income, you may be required to pay taxes here in Portugal. So in some cases, we have flat rates of 28%. For instance, one of the examples is interests, again, are taxed in Portugal with 28% flat rate. But the pension is taxed with progressive tax rates. One of the myths that the people used to say about Portuguese taxes, when they see the brackets, they look at the highest level, and the highest level is 48%. They will think, well, this is crazy. I will not pay 48% of my income. So what we have in Portugal is a progressive tax rate system. This means that each bracket of your income will apply to a different tax rate. And for higher, we perform a simulation. Imagine that you have 80,000 euros of income in 1 year. So the tax rate that will apply is 35%. So because of this tax rate progressive system, finally you may pay about 20,000 euros for this 80,000. Of course, it's a lot, but in some cases you can also deduct part of this in your tax return in US. So it's a matter of analyzing each case, each situation.
Do you think that we have any kind of answer for someone who may have been interested because they saw the tax break, right? They saw that was in place. It's no longer in place. That's obviously going to impact the amount of income that someone coming over here and retiring, like, what is your response to that? Do you feel like financially it still makes sense for someone, especially coming from the US?
Well,
or is that too general?
Yeah, but my understanding and what clients most of the time share with us is that the cost of living in US it's really high, and in most one of the big expenses that a citizen in US face is with healthcare. And healthcare is really cheap here in Portugal. Even if you go to a private hospital, it's nothing comparing with US. And the public healthcare system is also really it's not perfect, but for important disease, they are well prepared. The cost of living is something that you should not keep thinking as a US citizen, because the cost of living, the real estate, it's increasing a lot. It's true, but even with the higher values, it's still a competitive price. And the food, the grocery, the utilities are really are cheaper than US in general.
I like that perspective so much because, it's the holistic picture that people, I feel like, need to look at. And again, I've often said on the podcast, like, we're not here to sell you on moving to Portugal. I mean, we're here to provide information and our experience and connect you with people that can help you make those decisions for yourself. But it's impossible for us to sell you on moving from America to Portugal. But I think that, like, it's very easy for someone who might have been looking and thinking about it and doing some research about NHR and feeling like, oh, I missed the boat. I missed out on NHR. I guess I'm throwing that plan out the window. But the way that you just position that, to me, it makes a lot of sense, because I have experienced what the difference of the cost of living is here and the holistic experience that you're getting. And again, this all goes back to whatever somebody is wanting in retirement or in moving here even before they're retired, and what the cost of that is in comparison. And so it kind of offsets something like, oh, I've missed out on a tax break, right? Like that's the real high level 10,000 foot view to me of what they should be thinking about. And I also say and reiterate again that everybody's situation is going to be different. And that's why working with someone individually and strategically thinking about how is best to manage the tax implications is so important. And on both sides, right? Someone like you in Portugal and working with someone who is familiar with international tax situations in America as well. Because if I remember correctly, you have to file in the US first and then file typically in Portugal, right?
Yeah, it depends where you will request the tax credit, because typically what happens is you are taxed in one of the countries, and then you can ask tax credit. In case, for instance, the NHRs, they have a flat rate of 10% here. For private pensions or social security pensions, so they cannot offset anything, or they cannot request any tax credit from you. The taxes they pay in US, they will pay 10% point. They can use the tax amount they pay here in Portugal to request tax credit in US. On these situations, we used to recommend, well, file first in Portugal and then you can enter in US, because you will request this tax credit. Of course, there are other ways to do it, because you can, on next year when you are filing, you can inform in US the amount that you paid here in Portugal. About NHR, the good news are the there was a change in the government of Portugal. We had a socialist party, and right now we have a democratic, social democratic party in power, and they are bringing back the NHR, but not in the same with the same conditions. According to the information that we have, that is not a lot. The idea is that it will give benefits most for digital nomads, for D8 visas. For these, you may keep having some benefits. For pensions, probably this will not be available anymore.
Projected NHR you were just referencing have to do with certain industries.
Yes,
certain types of jobs that would be filled by someone coming here on a D8, or I feel like I read something where it was very specific about certain industries that someone might be working in to attract that kind of talent to Portugal. Is that right?
Correct. The point is, the Socialist Party, who was in power until end of the last year, what they did, they cancel this NHR and they present an alternative for these startups and for these innovation areas. However, the point was they approved the law, but they never present details about how we can apply. We are still using the old NHR, and this is the only way to apply for any tax benefit in Portugal right now. As we have now a new party in power, they will not continue this transition or this new NHR more linked with innovation and with these startups. They will bring a new one more oriented to these D8s. We have some clients. They are just wondering about what would be the next step, and waiting for news and to be sure they do not commit any mistake.
On a D8, and this might be a little bit, we've talked about it a little bit with what you just said. On a D8 visa, if I'm doing contract work remotely for a US company, what are those tax liabilities in Portugal? Is that the progressive scale that you were referencing earlier?
Yes, but important thing. According to the Portuguese tax law, you cannot be an employee from Portugal to a US company. So the US company must have a kind of representative here in Portugal, must pay social security for you, and must withhold some taxes from you monthly and be a tax representative of the company. But there is an alternative. You can use what we call EOR, employer of record. This means that it's a kind of company in Portugal, established in Portugal, and they resell your service. They are your employer here in Portugal, and they resell they invoice your cost to the company. If you are under NHR program, you will end with a high value activity, and this D8s may still have these benefits next years with this new NHR. If you are under these high value activities, you may face a 20% flat rate of taxes. What is interest? One alternative is to establish as a self-employed, or to register here and as a self-employed. There are important or relevant incentives to be a contractor or a service provider from Portugal, because you are not taxed for your full amount of income. You are taxed only in 75% under what we call a simplified regime. And you have some incentives on the very first and second year. So it's interesting to explore this possibility as well.
It sounds like that's what we were talking about too, where it's like once you get established here and you decide that you want to build some sort of business here, there's definitely tax incentives to doing that as a self-employed situation in Portugal. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So far, I'm following you. I hope everybody is. Taxes to me, I'm like, it's like the worst time of year for me when it's tax season and we're trying to do our taxes in the US. So I can't, you add on the level of Portugal now, I'm like, oh my God. So thank you. How does Social Security tax, if it exists, work in Portugal? So first of all, there was a question of the idea of Social Security in Portugal. And if you pay Social Security to both countries, can you get Social Security benefits from both when you're retired?
Well, there are also agreements between the countries in terms of Social Security. So typically you will receive in proportion with a pro rate based on the amount that you make in contributions from one country to the other, or in the other in terms of pension. What you can expect as benefit here in Portugal if you have first idea that it's important to understand social security contributions are only linked with salary and with service provided. So this means that imagine that you have a rental income or interests or any other passive income. You don't need to pay any social security contribution. The only social security only applies for this independent or self-employed and salaries. And what in Portugal the social security covers, it's any disability that you might have, illness, maternity leaves, also the pension. And one important thing that is not really linked with Social Security, and for many expats, it's not common. Healthcare system is not linked with Social Security. You can use the healthcare system without having any contribution for Social Security. They are completely different things.
What is the process for filing tax returns as a U.S. citizen who has moved to Portugal? Is it an online process? Do you recommend a tax accountant, of course? What are the deadlines? I think we talked about that a little bit, but can your visa be affected if you don't stay current on taxes?
I will start with your last question. Yes, it can be affected. So you should, during your residence, you should follow the rules of your country, the country where you are a new resident. The filing period is from April 1st until June 30. It's not an easy process. Typically, we receive some clients, they use TurboTax from US, or they do their own taxes. Here in Portugal, our recommendation is to use the service of an accountant, because they will find, if you have a good one, they will find the best way to file and to reduce the taxes that you will pay, because we have some liberty or some possibilities when filing. We can, for some income, we can use progressive tax rates, or we can use flat rate. We can, if we inform that taxes were paid in US, you may be exempt. If you do not inform, you will pay taxes here in Portugal. If you do with someone, with an accountant, the other advantage is that when you receive the taxes to pay, they can look at it in a critical way, and they can request some explanations from the tax authorities. We have some clients to who we provide this service also, because they don't really understand why they are paying so high taxes here in Portugal. And sometimes we find solutions to amend the tax return and to pay less taxes in Portugal. This is always the goal, is to pay the less taxes possible.
I totally agree with you. Like, you, especially if you are someone listening to the podcast, right? And you're listening because you have at least considered potentially moving abroad or moving abroad to Portugal. This is definitely something that you don't want to mess with, right? You need to know up front what the implications are. And I think you also need to have someone that you're building a relationship with that helps you not only through the process of getting here, but once you get here, understanding how to make sure that we are abiding by the rules of the country. I mean, we do a lot of discussion about this on the pod about assimilation, and we're, not being here to change anything, right? Not like you could change the tax regime, but it's also respect. For me, it's like, you're not here to try to get around something. You want to work with someone who will best help you do what you need to do tax-wise, legally, but also benefit you as much as possible. And I think that that's a form of respect for the country that you're living in. I think it's so important that you get a handful of people that are more knowledgeable about the stuff than you as your team. And that's exactly how I feel about you for us. And I'm glad to share you with everyone. And I'm just so happy that you were able to come on the podcast for today. I know this was a very basic and maybe not even. I mean, now as I get into it, I mean, it got a little complicated already. And I think that just shows that we'll do a series. We will have you back, Hui, and we'll keep digging into like these more complicated questions about taxes, because I think that they could be ongoing for a while, especially with people that are new to the podcast, or new to this idea of even thinking about moving. So I would ask one more question, and I think it's very important. So what are the services that you can provide, and how do people reach you? Because that's really part of what we wanted to share with people today. Is we personally have worked with Hui. So we have that relationship. This is not some random person that we're throwing on the podcast. And so we feel very comfortable connecting people to you. And so what is the best way? What is the best way for them to find you and start their own individual conversation with you?
Our first contact typically is a consulting session, and this is what we mostly do during the year. Then we support people who want to establish as a self-employed service provider from Portugal. We take care of the full process: taxes, social security. We file also VAT for the clients. And then we have the tax season. We are focused in individual taxes. We don't work with company taxes. We used to say that we sell technical information, technical services, but we also sell peace of mind. They are peace of mind with their taxes in Portugal. The best way to contact us is we have a website, www.goalseek.pt. There you can find a button where you can contact us, and we are pretty easy to be reachable, and we are something is not sometimes common in Portugal. You send an email and you wait maybe 2-3 days. With us, you receive an email. We have a rule: in 3 hours, our client must receive an answer, even if it's just, well, we don't know, we will contact you later. But we try always to be in contact with the client, because sometimes they are in panic. They just need someone to say, well, be calm, that we will find the solution.
Well, thank you so much. This is the first of many that I'm sure we are going to have.
I hope so.
And I'm very excited because we get to share you, because I'm really, really happy that we have developed such a friendship, and I just trust you. And I'm just excited that you're helping us to kind of get this information out to people, and hopefully in a consumable way. I mean, and we can, again, I'm going to make a call to the podcast listeners that if you have follow-up questions for Rui or us, or need a clarification for the next series, right? The next part in the tax series that we're going to do together. Again, message, email, on the social media, however you want to reach out to us, but send us the questions, we'll collect them, and that gives us the opportunity to really answer the questions that the listeners really want to know. So
yeah, of course.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Rui, for joining, and I'm sure you guys will definitely hear him on the podcast soon. Thank you guys so much. Talk to you later. Listen up, future expats. For more content about our move, the visa process, Portuguese culture and destinations, and tons of support resources for your own decisions and potential move abroad, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Portugal Junkies.
Stay in touch and help us reach more people by subscribing here and following us there.
Cheers, y'all!